Okay, let's see how galaxy brain this man had to be. Picture this. You are the jailer, and you have been imprisoned by your college improv team. You have to convince one of the people that banished you to super hell to now be your friend. You know how prisoners casually convince the warden to start working for them? Something like that. Next, you have to convince the warden to start the best spy industry ever to be created. Simple plan, baba bing, baba boom. Now, use that spy system to convince beings of pure chaos and void to start spewing onto random planets. Then, use one of them to corrupt a being of pure justice. All easy stuff. This is where the jailer's genius shines through. Have your army, now working for the corrupted Titan, be strong enough to level entire galaxies except this one random planet that has all the stuff on for some reason. Now, keep this Titan, who doesn't know he's working for you, just out of reach of his goal for millennia. The fun part begins. Use the spies to convince one of the Titan guy's allies to create a zombie guy with the express purpose of having a hat and killing and then resurrecting one random elf that will become important later. Make sure the humans win so the bad guys come back later, then have hat guy die so elf lady predictably tries to unalive herself so that she can see big bald man. Make a deal she can't refuse, the apprentice style, and start controlling things in the background even more again. Now here is my favourite part. Make sure the orc that has a few genocidal tendencies goes full sicko mode and must eventually stand trial in Pandaria. This is where you obviously time travel to another dimension so that a random other orc can come back to the main dimension and summon the Titan that you had on the back burner. Your super mega powered death plan hinges on interdimensional time travel. With this once dead orc back in the main timeline, have the Titan guy come to the planet he's just been chilling ignoring for some reason and have his army be good enough at killing but not quite good enough to win. Now expect these random people on the planet to do a set of weird choices that has opened a space portal from their solar system to the main base of the bad guy. Since the base is right there, they can fight the literal Titan of Death, and you must now hope they win. Because they have obviously won, the Death Titan breaks this random robot lady and the real game begins. All the other stuff was child's play. Make the elf lady sleeper agent all evil now and inevitably break that hat that you left on the planet for this exact moment. Congratulations, now you can pull a blonde boy into the death zone and use him to get a shiny circle from one person. And that's it, the mortals will give you the rest of them, don't worry. You've done it! You have all the Lego pieces you need to find where you left your supersuit and remake, unmake, undo, redo, bless you Gazoon-type reality.
35 years after the Dark Portal. The Shadows Rising novel comes first, which I have already adapted, and there is a supercut, but let's gloss over it a little bit here. In the wake of the Fourth War, the Alliance and Horde kept their armistice. Though there were still some conflicts, the Night Elves refused to participate and remained hostile to the Horde. But everyone was kinda united in regards to sharing the same common goal, finding Sylvanas Windrunner. Anduin asked Matthias Shaw to assign as many SI-7 agents as possible to achieve this, whilst the young king decided to work closely with Illyria Windrunner, hoping the Banshee Queen's sister might know a thing or two. However, she did not. Inquiries launched by the Horde had also proven equally useless. 'Twas as if Sylvanas had just bloody disappeared without a trace. But the Horde had another pressing matter to deal with, an assassination attempt on Queen Talanji, only narrowly prevented by the young Darkspear troll Zakan, who had a seemingly clumsy moment at just the right time. Now, Talanji had been considering leaving the Horde Council. This armistice denied her vengeance for her father's death. But, after the whole nearly assassinated slapbang in the middle of Orgrimmar thing, she had back to Zandalar considering leaving the Horde entirely. Something the faction wasn't a big fan of, so they launched an immediate investigation, appointing Zakan the Horde ambassador and dispatching him to Zandalar. The assassination attempt itself was instigated by a group calling themselves the Widow's Bite. They disapproved of the Queen's association with Bon Samdi, the Lower of Death. But also the leader of this group had a bit of a personal grudge against Talanji as well. A lady so proud that she refused healing for her smashed up legs whilst constantly moaning about her smashed up legs. Anyway, after a second assassination attempt on the Queen, Bon Samdi decided to reach out to Zakan, informing the young troll that Zandalar should very much stay with the Horde. And Zakan agreed to do everything he could to ensure that outcome. Meanwhile, Illyria and Turalyon were now going around full-blown torturing suspects for information in regards to Sylvanas' whereabouts, with Illyria using her void abilities to inflict pain, whilst Turalyon would use the light to heal the poor sods afterwards. Something Jaina Proudmoore was deeply concerned by when she witnessed it firsthand. She reported that back to the king, but, to a certain extent, they could not argue with the results. Turalyon and Illyria had discovered that Sylvanas' Dark Rangers were operating in Zandalar. That information was passed on to the Horde, with Thrall then getting involved, meeting Talanji and letting her know of this new development. Talanji was horrified, especially after she then learned that Sylvanas' Dark Rangers, including the Thanos Blightcaller himself, were actually bolstering the Widow's Bite rebels, under Sylvanas' direct orders. It seemed the Banshee Queen wanted Bwonsamdi dead, for some reason. Unbeknownst to everyone, this was because the Loa was actually interfering with the Jailer's plans. Bwonsamdi ruled over the Other Side, a pocket dimension within the Shadowlands, exclusive to trolls. See, many trolls had died during the Fourth War, and Bwonsamdi was doing everything he bloody could to prevent them all from going to the Maw and facing eternal damnation. The Widow's Bite rebels then worked blood magic to weaken shrines to the Lower of Death, which in turn prevented Bwonsamdi from aiding the Queen and weakened her significantly. At which point, Talanji swallowed her pride and beseeched the Horde for help in destroying her enemies. Amid final preparations before the climax of the book, Bwonsamdi surprised the Queen by agreeing to release her from her father's deal. The Loa knew that if he weakened any further, Talanji might die. He wasn't actually an asshole, and that really moved Talanji. 'Twas the nicest thing anyone's ever done for her. She and her army then faced the rebels at Bwonsamdi's necropolis, forcing the Widow's Bite to yield, but Nathanos escaped that battle, using the same death magic that Sylvanas had used against Saurfang. In the aftermath of that battle, Talanji just went ahead and reinstated the agreement with Bwonsamdi, but on new terms. He would relinquish his say in some matters, so that the other Lower of the continent could help shape Zandalar's future. And Bwonsamdi agreed, somewhat reluctantly. Also, he summoned the spirit of Rastakhan, allowing father and daughter to find a little bit of closure and heal their bond that had been broken during the Fourth War. And since Talanji was in such a good mood after all of that, she pledged herself and her island kingdom anew to the Horde and its council. And all was right in the world, right back where it started, before the 291-page book. Next, Tearing the Veil. Despite the fact that practically nobody had ever even heard of the bloke, the Jailer had been involved in a lot of things. 'Twas he who had ordered the forging of the Runeblade Frostmourne and the Helm of Domination. That helm being the very thing that allowed the Lich King to control the Scourge. 'Twas infused with powerful domination magic, a magic specifically created to bind the Jailer in the Maw. As such, it had a close connection with the Shadowlands, the Realm of Death. So whilst Sylvanas' agents had been at work in Zandalar, she had travelled to Icecrown Citadel to confront Bolvar Fordragon, the current wearer of the Helm of Domination. Now, Bolvar was kinda exhausted anyway. It took all of his energy just to keep the Scourge under control. That, combined with the power the Jailer had granted Sylvanas, made her too much for Bolvar. She easily brought the Lich King to his knees and seized the helm. And then, despising everything it stood for, she tore the damn thing apart. The resulting explosion was felt across the entire planet, instantly shattering the border between life and death, with an ominous rift forming in the skies. The Maw itself could now be clearly seen, staring down upon the world. And we, in our sweet, sweet innocent summer child naivety, stared back at it, with excitement and anticipation. The Realms of Death, aka, is this convoluted, or am I just a dumbass? Now, if you go right back to Chronicle Volume 1, there's an entire explanation as to how the physical universe was created in the first place. Light, void, coalescing, large kaboom theory, universe. However, the Pantheon of Death, the Eternal Ones, believed differently. As far as they were concerned, in the beginning, 6 godlike beings, known as the First Ones, existed. Light, shadow, order, disorder, life, and death. They existed in constant conflict with one another, until opposition became a sort of balance, which in turn resulted in creation, with each of the First Ones giving a piece of itself to this design. The denizens of the Shadowlands believed that every sentient creature in the universe sprang from this initial pattern. The Titan Pantheon, the Old Gods, the Naru, the Eternal Ones, the realms of the living, and also the dead, all of the things, formed by the First Ones. Side note, there's potentially a 7th power involved, but that's still very much in the we don't know yet category of things. Perhaps it will be expanded upon in future, or perhaps it will be completely and utterly abandoned. All I know for certain is that I don't think I understand the word fractals. Anyway, the Eternal Ones ruled over the Shadowlands with strict adherence to the intentions of the First Ones. The most significant and vital of Death's infinite afterlives were granted to 4 of the Eternal Ones, whilst Zovaal, the most powerful of the Death Pantheon, was appointed the Arbiter, diligently evaluating and then consigning spirits to their appropriate afterlives. Doing that, Zovaal would experience everything a soul had undergone in life, gleaning quite a bit about the physical universe and mortals in the process. Unfortunately, the more Zovaal learned, the more his pants filled with the poop, foreseeing the entirety of creation being imperiled by an unseen power. Zovaal became concerned that the forces of death, as they currently existed, fractured, were not at all prepared to face whatever this unseen power was. He brought that concern to the rest of the Eternals, but they just kind of rolled their eyes at him. If such a threat existed, the First Ones would have totally considered that in their glorious design, and everything will work out in the end. Fine, Zovaal thought. If my fellow Eternal Ones won't help, then I'll just do it myself. And so, Zovaal began his mission to destroy the Shadowlands as they were, and forge them anew, stronger and unified. To remake reality, though, he was going to need knowledge of the First Ones and their techniques. Knowledge that had long been locked away as sacred information in the sepulchre of the First Ones. 5 magic locks prevented entrance to that place, with each Eternal One carrying a sigil that worked as a key. Obviously Zovaal had his, but he needed the other 4. As the strongest of the Eternal Ones, he could absolutely just overpower his peers, but what Zovaal didn't foresee was how his colleagues would unite against him. The Primus, ruler of Maldraxxus, forged chains with a new form of magic, domination, ensuring that Zovaal could never break free, whilst the other Eternal Ones just stripped him of his titles, and his sigil, and his essences, and stuff, condemning him to oversee the Maw for all eternity. And with that, Zovaal the Arbiter became the Jailer, whilst the rest of the Death Pantheon used his essence to power a mechanical Arbiter to replace him, one which would not be so affected by the affairs of the souls she judged. However, the endless suffering of souls in the Maw only hardened the Jailer's resolve. He now wanted to remake the entire cosmos, unite reality under the dominion of death. Only then could the coming danger be defeated, in his opinion. Using eternity to his advantage, he spent a very long time mastering the domination magic within his shackles, turning them to his own purpose. He was still very much bound to the Maw, but he had complete dominion within it, so he also spent time building an entire army of new allies. The Mawsworn, which are broken souls twisted to his will, as well as allies from outside of the Maw as well. Allies such as Sylvanas Windrunner, a relatively recent addition to his plans. After convincing her she would be an equal partner and reap the rewards of a remade existence, she now trusted him quite a bit. The Banshee Queen did not know his true history though, nor his true intentions. Nobody knew that we'd all been doing everything he wanted for quite a while. The people of Azeroth were about to enter a time of real deep stinky doo-doo. Before we get to the pre-patch though, I'll just gloss over who the other Eternal Ones are, as well as their respective realms. Archon Carestia, the Firstborn, ruled over Bastion, a paradise-type realm for those who lived lives of noble service. In Bastion, folks would shed their mortal memories to become Kyrian, and then spend their afterlives in service as well, ferrying souls to the Arbiter for judgment. What a fantastic reward for a life of noble service. The Primus governed Maldraxxus, a realm where great warriors and tacticians became necrolords in the army of death, basically training, sparring and skirmishing forever. Again, in service, to defend the Shadowlands against any enemy that stood against them. The Winter Queen, in Ardenweald, those deeply connected to nature in life found restful solace here, safe and nurtured until a time when they could be reborn in the mortal realms. So far the only one that actually sounds like a nice afterlife. Sire Denathrius and Revendreth, a pit of darkness and suffering. Souls of prideful beings were sent here to endure punishment, given to them by the Venthyr. If, however, you were to give up your cruelty and arrogance, you could gain redemption, and then become a Venthyr yourself, and spend eternity inflicting punishment on other people. Something which sounds rather cruel and arrogant. Also, the mechanical fake arbiter did her job in Oribos, the Eternal City, a sort of central hub which souls passed through first. Or at least she had been doing her job there. Now she did not do her job, on account of being broken by the world soul of Argus. Now she just stood there motionless, being boring. The Scourge Unleashed. The pre-patch. Since the Helm of Domination had been torn asunder, the Scourge now ran rampant across the world. Bolvar could no longer control them, and so the peoples of Azeroth were forced to face seemingly endless waves of the buggers. Unfortunately, under the cover of all this distraction, Sylvanas ordered Morsworn Soulbearers to kidnap a bunch of Horde and Alliance leaders, with Anduin, Jaina, Bane and Thrall being taken. They also tried to take Tyrande Whisperwind, but she destroyed her would-be abductors, so they failed at that one. But with them gone, Gen Greymane and Lorthamar Theron had to step up to rally us all during this pre-patch. Also, at one point, we ran into Nathanos Blightcaller at his own home in Maris Stead, and he was completely unwilling to give up any information regarding the whereabouts of Sylvanas, so Tyrande killed the bloke. An act of vengeance for Teldrassil. But ultimately we had 0 leads to go on, so Gen and Lorthamar contacted the Knights of the Ebon Blade and Bolvar Fordragon. Sure, he no longer had his special hat, but he could still provide valuable insight into the Scourge problem. At the Ebon Hold, High Lord Darian Mograine and the rest of the 4 horsemen were currently tending to Bolvar. They'd each experienced a vision of Sylvanas' attack and had rushed to Icecrown to recover their leader, as well as the remains of the Helm of Domination. And Bolvar then informed us that even in its broken state, the shards of the helm still retained incredible power. Bolvar knew what to do next, but we'd all have to wait until the expansion came out to find out what that is. Into the Maw. The expansion came out, with Bolvar summoning Azeroth's leaders and greatest champions to Icecrown. And as is tradition, Horde and Alliance leaders started arguing with each other immediately. But Bolvar then urged us all to remain united and shut up. He then told us that when Sylvanas shattered the helm, she was touched by the power it released. Bolvar could sense an echo of this energy, leading all the way to the Maw itself, and presumably Sylvanas. And lucky for us, he knew of a ritual which could enable someone to travel to her location. Now everyone understood the ramifications of this journey. Mortals were not supposed to go to the Realm of Death, unless they wanted to risk being trapped there forever. Both factions were in a pretty precarious state with so many leaders abducted as well, so it wasn't a good idea for any of the remaining leaders to go. So that just left us, the champions. However, as Bolvar used the shards of the helm to complete his ritual, Tyrande just went ahead and rushed through the portal. Champions gave chase, but found no sign of the High Priestess. What they did find, though, was a buttload of Morsworn. After fighting through them for a bit, though, we came upon Jaina Proudmoore, protecting a gravely injured thrall. Jaina informed us that she had seen Anduin and Bane during their imprisonment. See, all of them had been subjected to countless torments at the direction of the jailer. It seemed like he was testing them for some unknown end. After that, Darian Mograine used shards of the helm to compel shades within the Maw to tell us where the bloody hell Bane and the King were. And with that information, we located Anduin, imprisoned at the Tremaculum, and Bane, hanging about near Gorgoa, the River of Souls, with the High Chieftain very close to death, having been deemed unworthy by the jailer. Also, we encountered Helya as well, so hi Helya. But with all the leaders recovered, we now just needed to figure out how the bloody hell we'd get out of here. Again, Mograine compelled a Maw Shade to tell us everything it knew, and it revealed an ancient artifact known as the Waystone. It was said to have been built by the mythic First Ones. A passageway out of the Maw. Exactly what we needed, huzzah! But good luck with that, because it's broken, you shit. The heroes of Azeroth then trekked east to find this legendary Waystone, and found it, unguarded and very much broken. But as the champion approached it, the bloody thing reassembled itself and began to glow. Jaina very quickly realised that the Waystone was not responding to them in the way that it clearly was for the super awesome champion. Unfortunately, before we could fully empower the Waystone, the jailer and an army of Morsworn arrived. We were not going to win this fight so early in the expansion, so Anduin called upon the light for a shield, providing the champion the much needed couple of seconds to fully empower the Waystone and cheese it. The 4 leaders took some solace in knowing that they had helped Azeroth's greatest champion evade the jailer's clutches, but Anduin's display of power in connection to the light had unfortunately revealed that he had exactly what the jailer needed. Oribos, the Eternal City. Apologies for this video being short, but I think I'll end it after this section. Kind of burned out a little bit making the last video, to be honest. The Waystone transported the champion straight to the heart of the Shadowlands, to Oribos, immediately coming into contact with Kar'Share and Kar'Delon, overseers of the Eternal City. At first, these 2 peeps believed the heroes to be agents of the Maw, come to attack the place, but soon realised, no, you're a living being, aren't you? Goodness gracious, a mortal, walking the realm of death. Goodness gracious. And not only that, but a mortal who had somehow escaped the inescapable Maw as well. Goodness gracious. Some kind of Houdini mortal. Whilst Kar'Share and Kar'Delon continued to lose their bloody minds, Another individual, Tal Anara, voice of the Arbiter, then approached, informing us that our arrival had caused the Arbiter to stir, something which had not happened for a very long time. Perhaps this Maw Walker could lend insight into a crisis which had consumed the Eternal City for years. Talanara had been forced to lead Oribos since the Arbiter had been rendered inert. Without the Arbiter, the souls of the dead, kind and cruel alike, could not be assigned an afterlife, and were therefore flowing straight to the Maw. To make matters worse, the realms of the dead were supposed to be powered by anima, the essence of mortal souls. With no souls, and therefore no anima, entering the various realms, the entire Shadowlands was slowly starving, whilst the Jailer's realm only grew in power. We were then taken to the Arbiter, in the hopes that our presence would rouse her further, but nothing happened. And Talanara was deeply disappointed that things were not going to be that easy. Anyway, after that, we used the Shard of the Helm of Domination again to open a portal from Oribos back to Azeroth, at which point High Lord Bolvar and his Death Knights arrived, informing Talanara of all of the things that had happened leading up to this point, i.e. Sylvanas shattering the Helm and Sky, and also leaders being abducted by Mawsworn creatures. Talanara recognised the description of the Mawsworn, sounded rather similar to the noble Kyrian of Bastion. Perhaps Archon Carestia could offer us more insight. So, using a portion of their own depleted reserves of anima, the Overseers opened another portal to Bastion, and thus the levelling story begins. In the next video.